Hello and welcome back to the BSD YouTube show. Your host, as always, Patrick Kerbler and Tim Jarrett. It is day one of the Matt Campbell era. Tonight we'll talk about the Matt Campbell press conference, talking about kind of what's next for Penn State, right? This is a big celebratory day and it's exciting, but this is only day one. Like the idea that everything is done at this point. We got to figure out assistant coaches. We got to figure out who's staying for Penn State, who's leaving, who's coming from Iowa State. Coaches and players alike. So we'll talk a little bit just about the timeline of stuff like that. And then we're going to talk about Penn State going to the Pinstripe Bowl, going to play Clemson. And then we'll end with some college football playoff talk. But first, and why everyone is really here, it's all about Matt Campbell. So I'll kind of just set it up for you guys. It was a great press conference, as I usually expect. Like, very rarely do these head coaches miss when it comes to the press conferences. I can even say from Penn State's perspective, right? With Bill O'Brien in 2012, he did a great job. James Franklin in 2014, dominate the state. Penn State boy with the Penn State heart, right? Did a great job as well. And Campbell also, I think, hit out of the park and really hit all the keynotes that you want to. So, Tim, I'll toss it to you first. Just overall impressions from Matt Campbell's press conference.
Well, I mean, like you said, he nailed it. And personally, as a 90s child who started following Penn State football back then, I was absolutely giddy over him name dropping guys like Kyle Brady and Kerry Collins and Courtney Brown as someone who fondly remembers that 94 team, especially. And to an extent, I guess, the 99 team, like certain individuals will say, not the season itself, but for the Paterno crowd, he did name drop Joe Paterno and, the toughness that his teams played with. So I think he even mentioned him again one more time during the presser. And he did give a shout out to Todd Blackwood because apparently his dad played against him when they were in high school. But he's from his whatever town he grew up near in Ohio. Massillon, I believe, is a Massillon. Yeah, you're the Ohio native here, so you can say it for us. Yeah, Massillon. So it's about northeastern Ohio from what I've seen on Google Maps. So, because he mentioned it's like 2.5, 3 hour drive from State College. So, that's part of the reason why he took this job too, is because, he kept preaching about, like family and, loyalty and togetherness, and that's he wanted to be closer to his parents. I know from what I've read, I think both his mom and his mother-in-law are having some health issues, and also his oldest daughter is starting college in DC next fall, so he wants to be closer to his family. But he also sees Penn State as a place that embraces a family type of atmosphere, and it's a place where coaches can stay for a long time if they're successful enough. You saw it. Franklin was here for 12 years. Bill O'Brien only was gone because he took an NFL job, and then for that you had 45 years of Joe Paterno, and that's not even counting the 15 years he was an assistant before that. So that was a big theme I noticed, and I think for him is just also he felt it was time for another opportunity, and this was the right place for him, just in terms of the challenge, but also the ability to be highly successful and potentially win a national championship.
You mentioned that just the time for a new opportunity and going from Iowa State to Penn State, and this is something we'll probably talk about when we talk about the assistant coaches, but just in doing my research on Iowa State staff compared to Penn State staff, Iowa State's assistant coaches, and now this isn't like all of the support staff, but it's the position coaches and some of their general managers, director of personnel. Their total budget, salary-wise, was around $7 million. According to reports from Matt Fortuna, Penn State's is going to be about $17 million. So, yeah, it's very nice and easy to make that switch when you know that you're going to almost triple your salary pool for assistant coaches and recruiting staffers and the like. But we'll talk about that once we talk about some of the assistant coaching stuff. Jared, I'll toss it over to you. Same thing, just immediate thoughts from what was a great press conference.
Yeah. Well, let me first add some context to what Tim mentioned about his hometown. Massillon, Ohio is known for one thing, and that is it is a football crazed town.
Yeah.
Like you have to show up at least 2 hours prior to a game to get in. Just one of those towns where everything shuts down on Friday. Huge rival with Canton McKinley. I remember when I was in high school, they played the 100th time in that rivalry, and there was like an 8-page spread in Sports Illustrated focusing on the history of the rivalries. So
there was a Netflix documentary about
yes,
that.
Yes, that's true. Yes. Yeah, so very well known for their football tradition and just their love of the sport, and that's just what he grew up in. Yeah, I similar to what Tim said, he really hit all the right notes. It was almost like if you didn't really know much about Matt Campbell, you probably could have assumed, halfway through that press conference that he was a Penn State grad or, a longtime Penn State fan. Just with some of the names he was dropping and mentioning over about Kyle Brady and, wanting to be like Kyle Brady, watching him growing up. He came across as someone, though, who absolutely really loves the game of football, and he loves the relationships that are forged by being part of a team. So yeah, he just seems very genuine. He became emotional almost from the start when I think it just kind of hit him like, oh, I'm the coach at Penn State.
You say from the start, it was literally
I think it literally felt like one of those moments where he just like got up there and just like everything just kind of hit him at once, and he got emotional a couple other times. He mentioned, when he talked about leaving Iowa State, which I'm showed what a hard decision it was. And again, I think that was because of the relationships he built there and what he was leaving behind. And he got emotional another time when he just talked about how much he appreciated his family. So yeah, it just seems like a really genuine guy, very, very likable, comes across as extremely humble. I think the fans are really going to buy into him, and he's going to quickly gain their support if there's anyone who is questioning the hire, which from the most part, I don't think, I think it's mostly getting positive reviews. But there's always going to be detractors or thinking we should have went another direction. But I think he'll definitely win those people over, and it'll be interesting to see how things look with the roster retention, because I could see him definitely, getting quick buy-in from the players who do have eligibility and maybe back next season.
Yeah, that's like the funny thing in all this, and they did ask Pat Kraft this as well, right? Like when just like the timeline, the process, and even, he basically said in so many words, like Matt Campbell was not super high on our list originally because he said, and I know Campbell talked about this as well, that everything has kind of happened within the last 5 days. Penn State gets left at the altar by Kalani Sitake. Penn State pivots from there, targets Matt Campbell. And from that Wednesday, afternoon, Wednesday night to, Friday evening, a 48-hour span, Matt Campbell was really contacted by Penn State and then becomes the head coach. And even Kraft kind of said, like, why did I not just look at this guy from the beginning? And it's easy as Penn State fans now to say that, like, oh, we got our guy in the end, right? Every fan base is saying that right now. Like Auburn fans are over the moon over Alex Golish. Florida fans, I'm sure, are happy with Summerall. But I do have to say that, man, Campbell does certainly just like fit what you would think of as a Penn State coach. I don't necessarily know that's a good or a bad thing, just because I, personally was, I was hoping for someone that was maybe a little bit more, offense friendly, somebody who kind of, I don't want to say like runs their program like an NFL team, but a little bit more progressive when it came to NIL. Now, in Matt Campbell's defense, it doesn't seem like he could have been progressive when it came up to NIL, because he even said today that he and his staff are the ones who, had to create the collective at Iowa State. So just the, a total lack of support there. So it's almost hard to know, like, what are your thoughts of NIL when you have, reportedly now $30 million to spend. So we'll see on that front. But yeah, I've said this time and time again, and I know I'm broken record at this point. Coaching hires, yes, this is about getting a better coach than James Franklin and hopefully winning a national championship. But it's also about energizing the fan base, right? The same way that Virginia Tech is energized with James Franklin. Penn State fans are now, absolutely energized with Matt Campbell. And just the emotion that he showed today, the humbleness, one of like the big detractors with Franklin, especially in recent years, and why his firing was so much more than just going 10-2. Penn State fans have gotten to a point with James Franklin that I think that Penn State fans believed that James was not like grateful to be at Penn State. Whether that's true or not, I have no idea. I think James worked extremely hard. I don't think that there's any like doubt that James put everything he did into the program, but on both sides, it just felt like James just can never quite connect, again, especially within these last 5 years, with the fan base the way that, I think that we all would have hoped for. So it was always just, as we saw this season, like this thing that was beneath the surface, and then it just exploded. And before you know it, both sides needed a fresh start. So I think we saw that today. I think we're seeing that with James Franklin as well, but certainly saw that today with, just how excited the fan base is about a guy that, it's literally in tears, crying, saying how humbled he is to be the head coach at Penn State and grateful he is to be here. And he wouldn't leave for any other job. So,
yeah. One thing I wanted to add, we didn't bring this up on Friday when we met after the hiring, but Campbell's 46 years old. And we just know from his background at Iowa State, he's loyal. He's not looking to just immediately, jump at any opportunity that comes his way, obviously, considering all the opportunities he has that he's passed on. So, it's one of those situations that, if things do go well, if things go as well as we're hoping, then he's going to be around for, another at least dozen years like Franklin was, hopefully longer. So, he even mentioned that if he was going to leave Iowa State, he wanted to go somewhere he would retire from. So it's nice to consider that level of, unnecessary loyalty, but just that stability that he could potentially bring to this program where he would be around for quite a while.
When Florida State opens up next year, we're not going to hear Matt Campbell. When USC opens up a year or two from now, and the funny thing is these are places that he was connected to at Iowa State, but that was always the thing. And right, maybe James was playing the game of, that's how he operated with Penn State to get what he wanted, whether it was increase in support for his assistants, whatever it might be. But just like as a fan, and especially we always we forget that people that are watching here and people that are online and on BSD and comment on our articles and stuff like that, we are in the 1% of Penn State fans that live and breathe this. There's a whole other sector of Penn State fans that don't. And all they hear when they hear about James Franklin is usually him complaining about the airport or complaining about support or how he's being mentioned for the, whatever job that opens up, right? Auburn, Alabama, USC, Florida State, whatever it might be. So I just think that Campbell brings that stability. And again, he brings a new perspective. He's a new personality. Things just ran dry with James. And as I've been saying, it's good for all.
Keep chopping away. Bingo. Franklin, that scumbag Jimmy Sexton, shopped him around every year until nobody wanted him.
I have no comment.
Yeah, I'm not going to.
I will say, in Franklin's defense, he did use those opportunities to, and you alluded to this already, Pat, but he did use those opportunities to leverage for, increase in assistant salary pay, so, increase in money going towards facilities and things like that. So
yeah, there was
off-putting, but it was to help, he used that power to help build the program up a little bit too.
There was some reason to the rhyme when Franklin doing that, putting his name out there for openings. It put Penn State in a position now where Matt Campbell is walking in to a place with modern facilities and NIL supports, things that Franklin had to fight tooth and nail for during most of his 12 years at Penn State. So, you could say Franklin walked so Campbell could run.
Sure.
In a way. So, I don't want to dismiss, what Franklin accomplished in his time at Penn State. Even though there's definitely things about Campbell that I'm already liking more than I ever did with James, but it can be both. Franklin did a lot of great things for Penn State, but his time had run out now we're embracing Matt Campbell, and we're excited to see if he can take this thing to another level.
And that's the important thing. And I know that it's like easy now to pile on James and to look back and be like, man, that guy sucked. That's for me. I can only speak for myself. I don't think that's true. James was a great coach. He did a ton of good stuff here. If you would have went back to 2014 when he was hired and you laid all this out, we would have taken that 10 times over. Like absolutely he did great things here. And Penn State is indebted to him for what he did for the program. You know, all the great players that came through, just the standard that was, you know, I don't want to say set, but was kind of, you know, restructured to after, you know, the sanctions and stuff like that. Like James was great for Penn State, but a time came, it's done with, it's over now. Both sides, as we've been saying, and we're being a dead horse at this point. I'm so looking forward to not discussing James Franklin ever again. Like I'm so sick and tired of rehashing the same old things.
Well, unfortunately, Pat, just to say, I can just think ahead though to next year. Let's say, I don't know, something offensively or defense is going right, and then you hear people say, "Oh, well, you know, it wasn't this bad under James," or you know, we're going to have those discussions again. It's coming.
Yeah. No, absolutely, but again, today is about Matt Campbell and the excitement that he showed today, just with the humbleness, you know, just what really seems like a perfect fit personality-wise, you know, talking about the toughness, the grit, all that stuff. And I do think that's like the other side to this in a sense, because I know before I mentioned like, you know, in kind of my mind, I thought about, get someone that's a little bit more offensive focused, someone that, you know, is going to be more NIL driven and things like that. And I'm hopeful that, you know, Campbell is a little bit more, what's the word? Opportunistic when it comes to NIL and how he spends it and who he's spending it on. But I do think that there is like this, we have to know what Penn State is, right? Like the program that Penn State is. And if I think about like someone like Alex Golesh, who, you know, basically runs like an air raid like offense, right? Like would that really fit at Penn State? And I don't think that it like would. Like I think what makes Penn State great is almost like kind of similar to like what Michigan did, which Michigan didn't try to beat Ohio State. They didn't try to say, you know what, we're going to try to become wide receiver you and outscore you and out athlete you. Yeah, Michigan recruited extremely well, and they had, you know, tons and tons of really good football players and athletes, but they bought into this, we're going to be tougher than you, we're going to win at the line of scrimmage. And I think that is still probably, you know, Penn State's blueprint. That's probably the path to, you know, the path of least resistance to success is buying into that culture of toughness and accountability and blue collar, because, you know, I just think that's what Penn State is. And that's what Matt Campbell, you know, talked about a lot today and is, you know, showing and hopefully continues to show down the stretch. So any other Campbell thoughts from today?
I want Campbell to go into Virginia and dominate that state. Don't we all keep chopping, as well as the other regions of PA and Ohio and Jersey, the DMV. So
would love to see him increase recruiting out of Ohio and not just, you know, not just in general, but go in there and steal some 5 stars from Ohio State. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but hoping he can use those roots and connections to accomplish that.
To flash all those Mount Union championship rings. Tell him your buds of Nick Sirianni.
Any final thoughts on Campbell? Are we good to move forward?
I think we're good. We've touched on the most important aspects.
All right. Terry Smith coming back to Penn State. That was one of the big things that when we went live on Friday, it was around 5:30 we went live, and it wasn't until, you know, about, I want to say 7:30, 8 o'clock that everything became finalized. And then it was reported by Audrey Snyder, and then quickly confirmed by literally every single reporter in the country that Terry Smith would be coming back to Penn State. I'll give you guys the floor first for this one. I just want to say, like, Terry Smith, what a legend. Like, seriously, like, just I'll kick it to you guys. And Jarrett, you can start us off. Just the importance of Terry Smith coming back.
Yeah, well, we were, when we were on Friday, I think we were all in agreement that we didn't think Terry Smith would be part of the staff. It just kind of felt like that's where things were at that point, and it was kind of hard to see that. And basically, as soon as Franklin, or excuse me, hopefully I won't call Campbell Franklin, but pretty much as soon as Campbell was announced, not too long after that, he announced that Terry Smith was going to be a part of the staff and retained. So he really, I appreciated that Campbell mentioning this at the press conference, but he talked about watching the Nebraska game and just how prideful the team was playing and just how much intensity they played with, and considering everything that happened up until that point, I mean that is the mark of a really great leader. Shows what Terry Smith was capable of doing by keeping everything together and getting them to play at a high level despite everything going completely wrong for most of the season. It's great to have someone around who's just so familiar with just the university and the community and the operations, and just have that steady hand that the players like. I'm sure that'll help with retention in some ways. Yeah. So I thought it was a huge hire. Obviously there was a lot of fans who were in support of Terry getting the full-time gig. So I think it's just kind of an all-around win-win, and just glad that he's still going to be part of the staff.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, I just echo Jared. I mean, I was very pleasantly surprised when I saw the news that Terry was being retained, because it kind of felt like on Friday it was maybe good as gone. And I remember his name was being bandied about as a candidate for the UConn and Memphis head coaching jobs. So I figured, maybe he's going to end up getting a head coaching position if he doesn't go to Virginia Tech and join Franklin's staff there. But yeah, I mean, that was probably the biggest win for Matt Campbell so far in his short tenure, was retaining Terry Smith. His longtime ties to Western PA, as a high school coach there. And I think, I don't know if maybe you touched on it, Jared, but he and Campbell had a prior relationship, because Toledo when he was at Toledo, especially, like, he would recruit a lot, from the Whitfield area, from Gateway High School where Terry coached at. So they had prior relationships from that. So I think, it's not like they lacked familiarity with each other when Campbell was hired. So, but just a huge win for the program. And of course this might help, maybe certain players that have eligibility left, who are maybe had a foot out the door into the portal. This will give them second thoughts and consider coming back in, sticking around.
Yeah, Tony Rojas was tweeting about, if Terry gets the job, 90% of the team will stay. Weirdly enough, those tweets are gone now, even though Terry's back.
Because Rojas had no intention of ever staying himself.
I don't know. I mean, he was in Miami this weekend. Just write that one down, maybe. But anyway, no, the Terry thing, it's just, I have so much respect for that guy. Like, whether we don't know, like, what the reality was of his relationship with Kraft, right? Like, I know there's a lot of Penn State fans who, maybe want to believe that, like, Terry didn't actually get, like, a fair shot at the job or whatever it might be, or right. Like we don't know exactly what happened. What's Terry's understanding of what the reality of all this was? Regardless, I think it can be very easy for someone in Terry's spot to say, I think I did a really good job here. This is my alma mater, right? We, after the Nebraska game, saying this is my locker room, like, really went out there and said, like, I want to be the head coach. It can be very easy to let your ego get in the way of all that, and to, I don't want to say, like, necessarily, like, push you away, but, just almost come to realize that maybe, like, I just need to get out of here. Like, even if it's not, I don't want to say it's not best for me, but just like a fresh start, almost like we're talking about with, like, James Franklin, just like how, Terry's been here for the last 12 years as well, right? He's seen all the James Franklin things that have happened. And then just to add on these last 8 weeks as the interim coach, like, I don't think anyone would have blamed Terry if he decided to go to Alabama or Ohio State. I know, like, Virginia Tech is, like, the popular one. Like, Terry Smith is one of the very best quarterbacks coaches in America. Like, it's not even like a Penn State alum thing. Like, yes, that's great for Penn State, but just, like, as a football coach, like, there's not a college, a program in the country that wouldn't love to have Terry Smith on their staff and coaching cornerbacks. So I really think that he could have had his pick of where he wanted to go, potentially even like NFL gigs. Like he's super, super highly, highly respected. So I just have a ton of respect for him. Like apparently not even like thinking about leaving. Like he was very, assuring the entire time that he wanted to stay at Penn State, that he'd be super open to staying at Penn State and helping in any way he can, right? Talk about a guy that would get emotional, right? He broke down a couple different times, talking about what Penn State means to him. And to see him go through all of this, keeping the team together, winning these last 3 games, really pining to get the job, but not getting it, and maybe having a real shot, but not having a real shot at the job. And it can be easy to let your ego get in the way. And he just didn't. He's Penn State for life. And it's super inspiring. And as a Penn State fan and as a fellow, Penn State alum myself, like it's just cool to see. It's cool to see it. And it takes me back to like what we were saying about like Matt Campbell. Like we as Penn State fans, right? We love Penn State so much. And we want to see that in like the leadership. We want to see that of the people who are representing Penn State on the highest levels, right? The president, the AD, right? That's why, the Pat Kraft thing has kind of all switched 180 now that we have seen his mindset and we're all in agreement with it. But right, that's why today with Matt, like it was cool to see him get emotional. And that's why with Terry, it's the same thing. I know that Terry Smith loves Penn State the way that I do. So excited to have him back, excited to have him around. He'll be, super impactful and in, hopefully keeping this team together, but even more importantly, like just building out the team moving forward. Like, yes, keeping the players on the roster now, but just in general, he's someone that you want to have in your football program. So
I am curious, Pat, to see, does he retain his cornerbacks coach title? Because we're segueing into our next segment about what kind of staff Campbell's bringing in, but that'd be rumors that his cornerbacks coach at Iowa State, Hank Poteet, might be following him to Happy Valley.
Yeah, it's funny that Terry is, reportedly, well, not even reportedly anymore, but is going to be sticking around. But they are making sure not to give out like what his actual title will be. I did see that Mark Brennan tweeted out that he will be associate head coach. Remains to be seen on the position side of things. Same with Iowa State's defensive coordinator, John Heacock. He's been with Campbell dating back to his Toledo days. He's 65 years old. He'll be coming over. They are very clear to say that he will not necessarily be defense coordinator. They're trying to figure out exactly what his title is. So, yeah, I don't know what's exactly going on. What do we think Terry would do if he doesn't do cornerbacks? Like, is he safeties coach? Is he like wide receivers? Like, he was a wide receiver coach at Temple for the 1 year and played wide receiver. Like, do we have any thoughts on?
I mean, he spent several years associate head coach under Franklin in addition to his role cornerback coach. So I could see him in a role where he's, he's Campbell's right-hand man. I'd imagine regardless, whatever his title is, he's going to be heavily involved in working with the secondary since he, obviously has a pretty incredible track record of doing that. I could kind of just see where he's associate head coach and just kind of, I don't want to say another version of Campbell, but kind of covers a little bit of everything.
I mean, that's the thing. The staffs have gotten so big. Sorry, Tim. I just want to say the staffs have gotten so big. Back in the day was you only had your 9-10 assistants and that was it. Now you can have a defensive end coach, a defensive tackles coach, an outside linebackers coach, a nickelback coach, a safeties coach, a corners coach, right? Like you can have all these different coaches because as long as you have the money to pay them and they want to be at Penn State and they're getting what they feel is the right salary, they certainly can. So I almost do wonder maybe Terry doesn't like have a position. Maybe he's like just simply an associate head coach. But Tim, what were you gonna say? I
was kind of gonna say like I don't know what the limits are on how many assistants you can have nowadays, but it seems like that's expanded from what it used to be the standard 9 or 10 positions. So yeah, maybe it is possible he just doesn't have a specific position. He's just the associate head coach, or I don't know, maybe he moves over to safeties, like if Poteet keeps his cornerbacks coach title at Penn State, or maybe receivers if Iowa State doesn't bring their receivers coach, Noah Pauly, who I would really, really want to get because he's
Done a great job.
He's a rising star in the coaching world. His most notable receiver that he's coached that's in the turn up in the NFL right now is Christian Watson of the Packers.
That's right. I forgot that he also so he gets Christian Watson, then he
gets
gets
Dakota State, where he previously was before Iowa State.
That's right. I forgot about that. We'll talk about the Iowa State guys in a second. I do want to ask you guys. So we know Terry's staying. Are there any other Penn State coaches that we would want to stay? I'm trying to think of how to answer this. The funny thing is, like, I was trying to go through this. I really do like the staff. Like, there's no one probably other than Kotelnicki, but even Andy Kotelnicki. Like, okay, I'm not going to get into a Kotelnicki thing. I don't think Kotelnicki will be back. I don't think. Okay, let's just go through it. Offense corner, Andy Kotelnicki. I think we're all in agreement that that's probably going to be a no.
No,
not going to be back. Danny O'Brien, quarterback coach.
Definitely
sounds like he's likely to follow Franklin.
Yeah, he's very much a Franklin guy. Played for Franklin at Maryland. Don't think he's done enough as a quarterback coach either to necessarily. Yeah.
Fair.
Grunkmeyer certainly looked solid, but yeah, I wouldn't anticipate Danny O'Brien staying. Running back coach Stan Drayton.
Possibly.
Yeah.
I don't know who. I'm not sure who's coaching running backs for Iowa State, or maybe Campbell has somebody in mind that he might bring in. But Drayton does a reputation for being one of the best running backs coaches in the country. I mean, I know this year didn't quite go as we hoped, but once
Katron
when he got fired, Terry took over and they started feeding Katron 25, 30 times a game. Things got a lot better. So, I mean, I have no qualms with keeping Drayton. Frankly, I would, if it's up to me, I would keep him unless you
I do hope
know somebody for sure that you want to bring in to replace him.
Marquise Hagans.
No.
So yeah,
unless he wants to be like Towel Boy or something.
That one.
Towel Boy. As Tim alluded to, Noah Pauley is Iowa State's wide receiver coach. Was at North Dakota State, as Tim said, and developed and recruited Christian Watson, who's a wide receiver for the Packers. Also a trio of Houston Texans wide receivers, which is very funny that they all went to Iowa State. Xavier Hutchinson, Jalen Knoll, and Jaden Higgins. He also interviewed last year for the 49ers offensive coordinator job, which is, if Kyle Shanahan thinks that you're smart enough and you're that good of a football coach to be the offensive coordinator for the 49ers when your highest job you ever held was wide receiver coach at Iowa State, like, sign me the F up. Like,
that speaks volumes.
Yeah, that kind of shows you where he's at.
He's rising star. Liquid Airspace. That's any chance they could throw a bag at Jawan Sider and bring him back. Unfortunately, I think that ship has probably sailed. I think he's happy where he is working with Marcus Freeman at Notre Dame, but I guess you never know.
Also, just go back to Danny O'Brien for a second. I do like Iowa State's quarterback coach, Jake Waters. Do you guys remember Jake Waters and his importance?
Yes.
He was he was a target in the transfer portal. I think he would have been Penn State's first ever quarterback transfer, actually.
Yeah.
But ended up at Kansas State, if I believe.
And if I remember the story correctly, it was like he was going to go to Penn State night before. He, has a dream, and it's like him at Kansas State, and he took that as like, something like something from God that he needed to go to Kansas State. I do believe that he had a girlfriend at Kansas State as well, which is like kind of forgotten about in the story, if I remember correctly. But
this was in the 2012 season, correct?
Yeah, so he would have been the starter.
McGloin actually had a pretty good season under O'Brien.
Yeah. So yeah, he would have been the starter the year after McGloin Hack's freshman season. And he ended up being a very good college quarterback at Kansas State. So would be great to get him again. I do think it is very fitting that Kansas State themselves just went through a coaching change. They now have Colin Klein as their head coach. And if Penn State gets caught again and Jake Waters spurns Penn State to go be Kansas State's quarterback coach, I would find that funny. That is the funniest actual outcome, that Jake Waters just continues to live his life. Every 15 years, we get spurned by Jake Waters going to Kansas State instead of Penn State. Offensive line coach Ryan Clanton, already reportedly going to be coming here. Another guy who kind of was brought up in the FCS was that Northern Iowa had 2 NFL draft picks: Trevor Penning, who was a first-round pick, and then Spencer Brown, who was a third-round pick and is currently the starting right tackle for the Bills. So if you can develop guys at Northern Iowa, I think that you can definitely do that at Penn State, and he's done a good job at Iowa State as well. It sounds like Phil Trautwein is headed elsewhere. I don't want to say too much more because I don't know what. I get confused nowadays, like what I read is behind a paywall and what isn't behind a paywall, but just use your mind and think, where would Phil Trautwein be going? That's not Virginia Tech, but you can connect the dots. What about tight end, Ty Howell? Would we like Ty Howell to stick around?
Yeah,
I like him as tight ends coach.
Yeah, Luke Reynolds hasn't developed as we had hoped, but I think he's done a great job otherwise. So, yeah,
I think there's rumors that Franklin he's a candidate to be Franklin's offensive coordinator at Virginia
exactly.
Tech.
Yeah, I did hear that too.
Although I did look at their, just from what I've read, there's also a couple other guys that Franklin's targeting. So who knows what's going to happen with that? But I certainly look all the current Letterman assistants on staff. I would love to keep all of them: Ty Howell, Dan Connor, Deion Barnes. Terry's already sticking around, but I hope all those guys stay. But I don't know. It sounds like at least 1 or 2 of them are probably going elsewhere.
Yeah, Dan Connor and Deion Barnes are probably the 2 names that I was hoping will be back next year. So we'll see how things play out yet.
Barnes is an interesting one because Iowa State's defensive line coach, Eli Rashid, is someone who has been with Matt Campbell since they were both assistants at Toledo 2009, which, by the way, I know Tim Beckman is not a very popular figure when it comes to, Penn State people, given what he did at Illinois, trying to get all the players in 2012 hanging out outside their apartments. But his staff at Toledo, it's bonkers just how many future head coaches he had. Scott Satterfield was an offensive assistant. Alex Golesh, Jason Candle, who's now was at Toledo going to UConn. Obviously, Matt Campbell. So guy could certainly pick out some offensive assistants back in the late 2000s, early 2010s. But anyway, Eli Rashid was also on staff with Campbell at Toledo in 2009 and has been with him every step of the way, right? When Campbell got the head job at Toledo, obviously kept Rashid around and then brought him to Iowa State as well. And he's just a super solid defensive line coach. Iowa State has had 1 first-round pick in 50 years, and that's Will McDonald, who was a defensive end. They had another All-American defensive tackle whose name escapes me right now, but I don't know how they're going to make that work unless it's Deion Barnes does defensive ends, Eli Rashid does defensive tackles. Would they even be open to that? I don't know, but I can't see any coaching staff that doesn't have Eli Rashid. If he's been with him since 2009, right, 17 years, 16 years, whatever it is, when it comes to college football coaching, I mean, that's an eternity. So I am interested to see how they do that along the defensive line. Would love to keep Dan Connor as well. Would love to keep Poindexter as well. I think both of those guys, we'll see what happens. Poindexter especially, just with he's a UVA guy, but just being from Virginia originally might make some sense to go down to Virginia Tech. But if I know that he was up for the defensive coordinator job. He did not get it. Do you guys see who James Franklin's defensive coordinator is?
Is it Brent Pry?
It is Brent.
No, I didn't know that was finalized. Okay.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if it's finalized, but it's widely reported that.
Okay. That is
it's hilarious because in an online dynasty I was doing in college football 26 game, someone took over as Virginia Tech's head coach, and then the next season they hired Brent Pry as defensive coordinator. So it's like something straight out of a video game.
Yeah, it's going to be
Sorry, I was just going to say, I'm interested when James, after losses next season, blames the previous guy. He's like, the previous guy didn't leave us in a very good situation. Just throw his pride.
I'll say it's got to be strange for the returning players that, they had their head coach fired and then he's gone for a few months and all of a sudden he's just like back in the building like nothing happened,
Yeah, we see like sometimes like, right, Greg Schiano, he went back to Rutgers. Randy Edsel went back to UConn. Even though Mississippi State, they had Zach Arnett. He spent a couple years away, and now he's coming back to be the defensive coordinator again. You don't usually see the head coach fired and then like there was no other job he took. There was no like other than the season, a downtime. Like it's not very often that one season you were the head coach and the following season you were then just.
I can't think of any examples outside of an interim coach who went like Luke Fickell, for instance, going back to his previous position. Yeah. But I can't think of any examples where head coach was fired and then came right back in another role.
I think that's all we got for assistant coaches. I know we mentioned Hank Petit a bit as a cornerback coach. For those that don't know, Hank Petit, originally from Philly, played high school football in Harrisburg, and then went to Pitt. So this guy is like Mr. Pennsylvania. Played in the NFL for a decade, has been at Iowa State for a couple of years. Certainly would be a quality hire, but they have to figure out the whole, who actually coaches cornerbacks. Is it going to be Terry? Is it going to be Petit? But Petit would make a lot of sense. We'll talk more and more as we, get an understanding on, coaches that are coming here, players that are potentially coming here, players that are entering the portal and whatnot. But I do want to pose this question to you guys. Iowa State has Rocco Becht, who has been their starter for a couple seasons now. I think that he would be a 4-year starter, if not a 3-year starter. Penn State obviously also has Ethan Gronkmeyer, who does have a relationship with Matt Campbell. He visited Iowa State a couple times. Who do you think is more likely to be Penn State's starting quarterback in 2026? Rocco Becht or Ethan Gronkmeyer?
Rocco seems like the more likely choice, but I would much rather have Gronk, if I'm being honest with you.
Okay.
Rocco he's okay. Never really blew me away. I don't think he's the type of quarterback who's going to go out there and light up a defense and win games for you. So he's solid, but far from spectacular. And I think Gronkmeyer has a much, much higher ceiling, especially just showing how he progressed, especially after such a difficult start to his starting career. He's starting out on the road at Iowa, then Ohio State, then Indiana. I just thought he really progressed nicely in the second half of the season once he became the guy. And yeah, I think he's got the world potential. I think he sees the field very well. I just think he has such a higher ceiling than Rocco. I'd much rather see Gronk as QB1 next year.
Yeah, the thing is, Gronk, he still has like 3 more years of eligibility. Rocco's only got 1. And like Jared said, I mean, he was good at Iowa. I mean, he kind of took a step back this year. I'm looking at his stats. I mean, he had, last year he had 25 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, 3,500 yards. This year it was almost 1,000 fewer yards, 16 touchdowns, still 9 interceptions. So, I mean,
60.5 completion percentage.
Yeah, I mean, that doesn't scream like, guy I want Matt Campbell to bring with him from Iowa State. Especially when you got a guy like Gronk, who, as we saw, he developed nicely over these last 6 games, especially considering how he got thrown into the fire to begin with. He does need to bring in. Well, we got Peyton Falzone, I guess, but he probably might have to bring at least one portal QB from somewhere who can at least, give Gronk some competition. It's important that he gets pushed in the offseason. But I don't think Rocco Becht's that guy, though. I'd rather have Gronk.
Who do you guys think? So Jarrett thinks it'll be Rocco, but he'd rather have Gronk. Who do you think it'll be, Tim?
I think it's going to be Gronk.
Okay. I would be stunned if it's not Rocco Becht. Stunned. I just think, right, like Matt Campbell is fiercely loyal guy. Like I think kind of similar to James Franklin in that aspect. And if he's coming here, one, quarterbacks are not cheap. Rocco is probably someone in theory that he can get, cheaper than others. And as I think Gronk looks solid, and I wouldn't be opposed to Gronk. I don't know if he did enough from like for an outsider's perspective to be like, yep, I'm going to hitch my wagon to that. Maybe I'm wrong. And the previous relationship that he has with Gronk, having recruited him out of high school, that plays a part in it. But I would be pretty surprised if it's not Rocco Becht. But we'll see. We will certainly see. Penn State's going to the Pinstripe Bowl. They're playing Clemson. We'll kind of transition here. Game will be on Saturday, December 27th at noon. I know there was a lot of talk of them potentially playing Pitt. That did not work out. Instead, it's going to be Clemson. I have no thoughts on this game, to be honest with you. I mean, it's going to be, I imagine, a pretty big opt-out fest for both sides. Penn State's already had Zane Durant, who's opted out. I imagine there'll be, a couple other likely NFL draft picks that will opt out, for Clemson as well. I'm pumped that it's in New York. I will probably more than likely go to the game, or at least am looking into going to the game. Thoughts on Clemson? Thoughts on the Pinstripe Bowl? What is your excitement for going back to Yankee Stadium, first time since 2014?
So a couple points I find very interesting is that the Pinstripe Bowl will pit the preseason number 2 versus the preseason number 4.
Yep.
Which nobody would have, if you would have told anyone either Penn State or Clemson would be in the Pinstripe Bowl at the end of the season, I don't think anyone would have believed you or even been able to fathom that idea. I mean, they were both teams that a lot of people were picking as in the national title game, or your potential national title winners. So, and another interesting point is that the Franklin era will begin and end with the Pinstripe Bowl. His first season ended in the Pinstripe Bowl, and his last, the last season I started at Penn State will also end in the Pinstripe Bowl. Outside of that, they had very similar seasons. They got off to very rocky starts. Clemson more so because they were 1-3 to start the season. Losses to LSU, Syracuse, and the other ones is Georgia Tech. Mm-hmm. I think they only had one. They beat like Wofford or some small, non-conference team in that. But they did end on a 4-game winning streak. So despite everything going against them, they were able to rally and right the ship somewhat. And they were the same. They were 3-5 at one point, and looking like they may not even be bowl eligible. So very weirdly similar seasons for these two teams. And you were mentioning plenty of opt-outs for Penn State potentially. Hopefully it's the same for Clemson just to kind of even things out a little bit.
They were a veteran team too.
I will say about Clemson though is I know Dabo gets all kinds of criticism for being very late to the party with the transfer portal, but in their defense, they weren't really losing players to the portal either. So I kind of wonder if if the players are really bought in, that there may be few opt-outs for Clemson. That's just speculation, just based off of their culture. So I wouldn't be shocked if Penn State outpaces Clemson in opt-outs.
You still think what purpose does Cape Klubnik have to play in this game? I mean, he's expected to be like a first-round pick in the draft, and
I don't think anymore, is he?
Yeah, it's like what
he may need he may need some tape to help his cause a little bit.
No, I guess now just say that. Yeah, maybe it does help him to play that. So I mean, but yeah, I think you're right, Jared. I've probably gonna be more opt-outs on the Penn State side. I mean, we already had Zane Durant post something on social media confirming that. There's also, I think, from what I read, like AJ Harris, Trevor Pena, a couple weren't at practice, so it sounds like reading the tea leaves, they'll probably opt out as well. I'd be surprised personally if either Katron Allen or Nick Singleton suits up for this one. I just don't think it's worth risking an injury to, hurt your draft stock for this game. So might be a chance to see the Corey Smith or Cam Wallace, Quentin Martin Jr. get some run in this one.
Yeah, I hate to say this, but it might be a showcase for, guys who are looking to impress Campbell or just, looking for opportunities next year. So wouldn't be surprised if it was a big audition for either Penn State or, whoever, whatever the future may hold for some of these younger players.
Yeah, so it just makes it difficult for me to make any sort of prediction or, anything on this game until we get more news on who's going to play and who won't.
Yeah. We got our college football playoff bracket, guys. I'm going to put you on the spot right now. Tim, 10 seconds or less. Tell me who wins the national championship.
Indiana. I've underestimated them this whole time. Them beating Ohio State. That's all I need to see. These guys can doesn't matter what caliber opponent they play, they just find a way to win.
Jarrett?
I'll stick with Ohio State. They were my preseason pick. I probably should pick Indiana because to Tim's point, I mean, it wasn't a fluky victory over the ball. I know Ohio State missed that field goal towards the end. But I mean, Indiana just lined up and beat them. Ohio State could not protect Sayin. They couldn't draw anything to get Jeremiah Smith open. I mean, Indiana was the better team, even with Omar Cooper exiting the game early. So, So after praising Indiana and giving reasons why they should win, I'm going to go ahead and pick Ohio State still.
Give me Georgia. It just it makes too much sense. Like we've all kind of, even the season for Georgia's been weird. Like they probably should have lost to Tennessee. I feel like people were just kind of, I don't want to say out on them, but just didn't view them in the same light that we usually view Georgia. And to be fair, it's not the Georgia of 2021, 2022 when their 3 deep was a top 10 team.
They just outclassed everyone.
Yeah, but it Saturday's game against Alabama was kind of a reminder of like who they are. Like if they played their game, they're just going to be really, really tough to stop. And I think they have enough weapons offensively. I think Stockton does a good enough job as a college QB. I like Georgia. I like Georgia a lot.
I will say, as someone who watched Georgia plenty times this season, I do feel like they've gotten better each week. Like it's been really impressive to kind of see how things unfolded for them this year. Because I feel like they've gotten stronger with each week of experience, and their defense is nasty. I mean, I think they've got the best linebacking core in the nation. I mean, just the way that they kind of they're human erasers basically. So I do think that's a solid pick.
Once again, 10 seconds or less. Someone in the first round, one team in the first round that you would, put as your dark horse. It could be any. It can. If you guys want to go with Oregon, you go with Oregon. But team in the first round that you would circle and say, "Ooh, I really like them."
I'll go Miami.
That was my pick.
They're inconsistent and they do sleepwalk at times, and they have a history of dropping games they absolutely shouldn't on their crystal ball. But to their defense, and this is different from last year, they are very good on the lines of scrimmage. They've got a great offensive line. Their defensive line is just really, really nasty and creates all kinds of matchup problems. So yeah, I could see, that's going to be a really fascinating matchup to watch Miami's defensive line against A&M's offensive line, because those are both, I feel like the strengths of those teams. But like I said earlier, Ohio State had trouble protecting Sayin from Indiana, and Miami can pose those same kind of problems if they do get past A&M and face Ohio State in the second round. So yeah, I'll go with Miami as my dark horse there.
I'm gonna go with A&M. I know, maybe the loss to Texas kind of took a little shine off of them, but before that, I was impressed with the way they're able to grit out and win some tough games. Notre Dame early in the season, and then that comeback against South Carolina, you're down 30-3 at the half. Nothing is going right for you. It looks like South Carolina's going to win and maybe win kind of big, and then man, they just go on a tear in the second half and come back to win that. So to me, that showed me that's a team that doesn't quit. They'll just keep pushing and pushing and put, and that's the kind of team that could, giving Ohio State some trouble. Maybe their defense probably more shaky than Miami's, so perhaps Ohio State got more success against them. But if I'm gonna go with the dark horse, I'll go with the Aggies.
Yeah, and A&M, the thing that impressed me about them this year was they've just won in so many different ways. So some weeks, it was throwing the ball 50 times. Sometimes it was ground and pound. Sometimes they'd win a low-scoring game, despite their not having the best defense. And so it was just kind of like whatever game they got into until the Texas game, obviously. They just had what it took to find ways to win. So I think it's going to serve them well in the playoffs.
Couple things. Well, 3. 1, I agree with Miami. 2, we got to work on our 10 seconds or less answer, guys. That was
That was mostly me because I feel like I rambled on about Indiana. And you did say 10 seconds. I went on for like 2 minutes.
That was really McGruber-esque.
Yeah, it wasn't even until like 3 minutes, and I was like, "Hold on, did I say 10 seconds or less?" So we'll work on that. That's one that we're gonna learn from it. We're gonna grow from it. We're gonna watch the tape, we're gonna get better, and we'll hit it next time. But third thing, give me Oregon, whatever the spread is against Texas Tech. Texas Tech is the biggest freaking frauds in the world. I'm not saying they shouldn't be ranked fourth. What their best win is going to Utah and beating BYU twice. I'm sorry, I don't find that very impressive. I'm going to be super interested to see what an Oregon Texas Tech spread is going to be, because I will take everything and put it on Oregon.
So just to clarify, I'm assuming you think overall the Big 12 is just pretty weak compared to other conferences?
I think that it's weak.
Texas Tech.
Yeah, I think it's weak in the sense of, yes, I think it's weak. I was going to try to talk myself out of that and think if there's a softer way to say that, but no, I don't think the Big 12 is very good, and I think that right after Texas Tech won, I saw a lot of like, this shows like transfer portal, NIL. Like Texas Tech their rosters like quadruple what other Big 12 rosters are. Like, yes, that is like, if Texas Tech was put in the SEC, do we think they're any better than 8-4? Maybe 9-3. Like, I personally don't think so. I know they have a good defensive line. I don't know. I think it's going to be a big step up when they play, the likes of Oregon. So we'll see. All right. I think that's all we got. We'll be back at
any omissions from the college football playoffs and subsequent tantrums thrown by said programs.
I forgot about that. You know what? I spent a lot of last year fighting with Notre Dame fans. I will say this. I understand why they would be upset that they were ranked ahead of Miami the entire time, and then on Selection Sunday they flipped. That I understand. So that's my only defense of them.
And I blame the committee for that, Pat.
Yeah. I think if there wasn't
Miami ranked over them from the beginning.
Yeah, because it was 8 spots initially, the first rankings. Yeah. I think Notre Dame was
Miami that Notre Dame head to head. I mean,
so when you saw that, you thought, okay, like they're not considering that head to head, and then they just kind of gradually got closer until it came last week, and they said, okay, it was head to head all along. So
yeah,
I get the committee's dropping the ball there, but there's a lot of other teams that have very solid Vanderbilt, Texas, even BYU, Utah. They could all make arguments too, just like Notre Dame. So
yeah, head to head has to matter at some point, but
yeah,
I do think it is like particularly cruel for Notre Dame fans to, I just know how I would react in that situation if I was a Penn State fan. I would at the end of the day be like, okay, like if you lose 2 games, like I just don't think you should have much of a. If you lose 2 games in the regular season, to be clear, if you lose in the conference championship, this whole thing, it's just a house of cards, and they pick and choose when something is important, when it's not important, when you lose if you lose your conference championship game, it is, if it isn't, like how you look, what the box score looks like everything is just made up on the go and to fit whatever agenda they want to do that year. But to have 2 10-2 teams that are like equal on everything when it comes to resume, like, yeah, Miami should always been ahead. That was stupid, but whatever. I mean, I find Notre Dame's misfortune very funny, so I'm okay with it. But
I also find I find it pretty amusing that they're going to forego a bowl game out of protest when they get all of the bowl money. It's not like they have to like split it with the conference or anything. So
yeah.
It's like you're costing yourself some money. Like, all right,
go right ahead. We'll see what happens all this. They're like mega pissed at the ACC.
Also, might want to just think about joining a conference.
Maybe a good fit in the SEC. Whiny, temper tantrums when they don't get their way.
Yeah,
it's perfect.
And the thing too is SEC's going to a 9-game schedule. I think you're going to see less big out of conference games being scheduled just with the way things are right now. So I don't know, especially if they depart the ACC. I don't know what the terms are there, but I don't see a scenario where all of a sudden they're going to be able to like get these really great resume building wins that are going to impress the committee, especially later in the year. So,
can I just quickly read you Notre Dame's schedule for next year? We will
terrible. Yes, please do.
Wisconsin at Lambeau, Rice, Michigan State, at Purdue, at North Carolina, Navy in Foxborough, Miami at home, Boston College at home, SMU at home, Syracuse at the Carrier Dome, or I guess it's called JMA Wireless Dome, Stanford at home, and then USC. It says site city TBD, but I imagine that would be the Coliseum. So your toughest matchup
row there.
Yeah, Miami, USC, and then a whole bunch of
like maybe SMU. Yeah, that's about it.
I mean, Wisconsin, not a bowl team. Michigan State, not a bowl team. Purdue, not a bowl team. North Carolina, not a bowl team. Boston College, not a bowl team. Syracuse, not a bowl team. Stanford, not a bowl team. Like, what are we doing, Notre Dame? What are we doing? So we'll see. I don't know. That they didn't deserve to be in, so suck it. Too bad. All right, I think that's all we got. We will be back at some point next week. We're still gonna, I guess it will be next week. I don't think we'll necessarily hop on at any time this week. Maybe if something important happens, but I'm hopeful that the next couple of days will at least just be, some assistant coaching stuff, some, maybe a portal player here or there gets announced as far as, transferring away from Penn State, but nothing that we need to hop on for. So we'll probably take this week, and we'll be back next week to talk about, probably take a closer look in depth at Clemson, the Pinstripe Bowl, talk about some things that happened this week, and then we'll also take a look at the first round of the college football playoff games in depth as well. So,
and also make sure like and subscribe if you haven't done so already.
Yes.
Check us out, blacksheepdiaries.com for our writings. But yes, we're currently at 545 subscribers. I just checked, so thank you to each and every one of you who helped us get over the 500 subscriber hump recently. And I see there's 28 of you watching right now. So please check again if you're whether or not you're already subscribed. And if not, if you like what you see, please do so. We really appreciate it. That's it.
The march to 1,000, Tim. That is now.
Yes, the march to 1K. So
that is now the goal. So, all right. Thanks everyone for tuning in, and we will see you next time.